Greetings, programs, and welcome back to the Awesome Friday podcast, the podcast where we talk about two new things every week. This week, we will be looking at a new movie and a new show. Well, a slightly new movie and a new show. We're going to be talking about Anyone But You, starring Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell, which is now released on streaming. And then we're going to be talking about the new live-action adaptation of Avatar, The Last Airbender, on Netflix. I am your host, Matthew, and with me is Simon. And how are you today, Simon?
Hola! I'm fine, thank you. I had Mexican food yesterday, so I'm feeling pretty fruity. I'm okay. I've had a great week, and we hung out. If you want to pay $2, you can listen to our Patreon bonus episode this week where we talk about our mandate that we had yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And before I met him, I had Mexican food and then ice cream, so it was pretty great. And then we watched a great film. So if you'd like to know more, it's only $2. What's $2 in this day and age? For a whole month, that's 4 bonus round episodes of us talking shit.
Not to mention listening to all of the. If you pay the $2 for 1 month, you can listen to all of the old episodes too.
Oh, there we go.
And there's tons of them, so you could listen to one a day, and you'd be like us, hanging out with us. It's pretty much exactly what it's like to hang out with us.
It is.
If you join our Patreon and pay as little as $2 Canadian per month. And that's probably the best plug we've had for that in the history of this show. So
it really is. I'm fine, but you're welcome. I'm good. I'm happy to talk about these two things today. And there's just a lot of good stuff at the moment, and not enough time to watch it all. And we obviously can't talk about everything, but I've really, because it was my birthday this week. So one of the things we're watching this week, I took a day off from work, and my wife did the same, and then we watched this film in a theatre with us and one woman sat like basically in the row behind us, and I think it can really enhance a movie when you're in that kind of situation, when you've basically got the whole theatre to yourself apart from one person who's laughing as much as you. And I'm very happy to talk about the film because I loved it.
My position on this has always been that the two best ways to watch a film in a cinema are that it be completely full or completely empty, and almost anything in between is insufferable. Because it allows people to, like, if you're just alone, there's no one else, and if it's full, people are pretty generally, you can get like a pretty good crowd vibe, especially for big, like, bombastic action-y type stuff. But oftentimes it's at its worst for, like, talking in phones and such when it's only like half full and people are sitting just far enough away from other people to sort of think they can get away with talking.
Yeah. Or someone, as they did in the title screen of the movie we saw yesterday, a full-on flash photography photograph of the title screen.
Yeah, like, what the hell? I mean, at least it was the only one. I'll give it that. But it was like, why? Like, first off, you don't need a flash to take a photo of a movie screen. It's not going to help anything. But also, why would you do that? I don't get why you would do that. I just don't. Like, when you go to the theater, you don't talk because it's disrespectful to the people on stage. But it's also about the people next to you in the audience, and
yes.
I feel like we forget that as a society at the movies.
I agree.
But that's a
whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But how enough about me? How about you? What have you been doing this week that we aren't going to be talking about? What little things have you been checking out? Are you still working through Cheers?
I'm still working through Cheers. I'm in season 4. It is still very funny. I'm very much enjoying it.
How many seasons are there?
11.
Oh.
It ran from 1982, 83 to 93, 94.
That's dedication.
I'm at a point where Frasier is a recurring but not regular character yet. He becomes regular, I think, in season 5.
Mm-hmm.
And in season 4, he is reeling from his breakup with Diane. And I gotta say, like, you know how, like, there's a shorthand phrase in our society about that whole Sam and Diane thing, and, like, when you rewatch Cheers, like, you get immediately why that became a phrase. Like, they are Shelley Long and Ted Danson are so good together, whether their characters are together or not in the show, and they are off again, on again. They are so good together that it would have been more shocking to watch the show and to realize it did not become a thing. It's such a good show. I can't even can't go into it without taking up this whole podcast about how well conceived and executed that show is in a way that like lots of shows just aren't today. But we also started watching that new, well, it's not new, a show that's new to us on Amazon Prime called The Tourists with Jamie Dornan.
Oh, is it good?
It's okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Jamie Dornan is an underrated actor, I feel.
Yeah, he's good. He's very good.
And he's playing a man who like wakes up in a hospital in the Australian outback with amnesia and is trying to piece together how he got there.
Oh, cool.
And it's quite good. It's very Australian, in a good way. What else did we watch this week? My wife and I have been debating when we're going to watch The Zone of Interest again, because that is now available on demand.
Is that something you want to watch again? I know you like watching everything again, but that's it's like choosing to watch Schindler's List again, surely.
I mean, there's value in that, though. Like Schindler's List is a film that you can definitely rewatch. It's not like
so
say
gut wrenching though.
Yeah, but that's not a bad thing. You know,
it's not.
You know, there's if a film can generate an authentic emotional catharsis within you, then it's definitely worth re-experiencing that. I would argue. It's movies that are boring that are not worth rewatching, not movies that are affecting. Whether the effect is quote positive or negative, to distill it down way too far. Yeah, that's pretty much it, though. I've basically just been working. I should tell you, I don't know if I talked about this last week, but I definitely finished Spider-Man 2 in under 2 weeks, 100%. The video game on PlayStation 5, and I loved every second of it, and I can't wait for some DLC action for it, because
that's some good work.
Those are like it's such a good game, such a well-conceived game, and I'm saying this with the acknowledgement that the main bad guy of the game is Venom, and I think Venom is the most boring Spider-Man bad guy there is. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love Venom as a kid, but it's definitely the anti-hero Venom side is a bit overused for me as well. Like I enjoy Venom when he is like Dark Desire Venom, like everything you want Venom, all the power you ever need Venom, and that kind of hypnotic, drug addicted Venom experience. I like rather than. Oh, I do enjoy the Tom Hardy movies, but Venom's definitely become something else now, hasn't he, as a character?
I just like, I don't know. I just find him a little overplayed and kind of one note. Even whether he's being a good guy or a bad guy, I find it to be kind of one note, and I don't care for him.
I'm kind of there with Deadpool as well. That's kind of how I feel, and the Joker. I don't ever want to see another Joker cosplay in my life.
I mean, I think the part of the problem with the Spider-Man games is that they chose the single best Spider-Man villain for the first game. So
yeah,
how do you top Doc Ock? And the answer is that you don't. Even although this game clearly sets up Green Goblin as the bad guy for the third game, which I think is a good choice. He's the actual number one bad guy. He's just not my favorite. But the way it's set up is good. And I look forward to whenever they release Spider-Man 3. Hopefully soon.
Well, you can watch the Craven movie while you wait. That would get you through. That's soonish, right?
It's out in the summer, I think in August, yeah.
That's something to look forward to.
I mean, maybe it'll be good. I doubt it. Spider-Man's or Sony's history of Spider-Man-less spin-off films has so far peaked with Venom 2 that I think is sitting at about 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's like 20% higher than all of the rest of them. So, I don't. I do love Aaron Taylor Johnson. I have no expectation. Like, at least it has people in it that I like, right? Like, Madam Web has people I like, but it just looked like a mess from the start. Whereas, like, Morbius just look I can't get past the Jared Leto of it all, even if I wanted to. Yeah. So anyway, maybe it'll be good. I don't think it will, but maybe it'll be good. I don't know.
That maybe he's doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. I have no expectations whatsoever that it's going to be good.
I mean, I prefer to choose optimism. I'm just struggling to do that in this particular instance.
Craven is so fucking boring, and it's going to be a Craven origin movie where they paint him as some kind of pained childhood trauma hunter, and
Well, it's interesting you say that because the Craven is the bad guy of the first half of Spider-Man 2, and he's actually really good.
I
Like
think
of the
he's
video
at
game.
his best. Yeah, I think he's at his best when he's just like a really good hunter who's like built, who just wants to hunt. I don't need his backstory. I don't need a movie on this one guy who just wants to hunt difficult things. You know what I mean? I don't need to see the action build up of how he became Craven. Like
Hmm.
before Craven, which is all that movie's going to be based on the trailer. So I'm not interested whatsoever.
I mean, it's just going to continue Sony's ongoing effort to create a shared universe of people,
Yeah.
of Spider-Man related villains with animal-based powers, but with no Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't. Even though there's no Spider-Man, everyone looks like they're inspired by Spider-Man's costume choices.
Yes.
So
It reminds me
weird.
of the Austin Powers 3, which I've talked about before, where they see the big monster. Look, it's Godzilla. Ah, it just looks like Godzilla, but for copyright reasons, it is not Godzilla. And that Madam Wed baddie is like the guy who's bitten by a spider and dresses up in a black Spider-Man suit. Definitely isn't Spider-Man.
Hmm.
He just has all the powers, but he's not Spider-Man whatsoever. It's just rubbish.
Yeah, it's definitely. I don't get what Sony's trying to do with that franchise because
Desperately
if
hold
they,
on to the rights, I think.
no, because I think if that were true, they wouldn't have to make so many of them. Like
I
if they were
don't know.
just trying to hold on to the rights, they would only have to make one every few years. But they keep pumping them out. I don't get it.
Oh well, I'm sure
Anyway,
they're. Maybe they got long tails on like rentals and video at home
but
and
those aren't
remakes
things
and things.
anymore. Those aren't. This is why you see celebrities getting paid millions of dollars to hawk. Oscar winners Matt Damon and Ben Affleck hawking Dunkin' Donuts. They're getting paid millions of dollars to do so, and that is pretty much entirely because you can't make money on the back end anymore. Like, you can't
No.
make money from DVD sales or
It's also pretty great, to be fair. I had no
yeah.
idea. Is that Matt Ben Affleck's natural accent like heavy Boston, or was he putting that on? Because it was great.
No, I
Because
mean
I
it's just
know that
how he talks. They're both from there, so I think that's just how they talk.
I still get very weirded out listening to Chris Evans like talk in his normal accent and how like absolute 100% Boston he is, and not just his speech patterns, but his like vocabulary as well. He's a
Yeah,
completely different person.
same with John Krasinski.
Right? Yeah.
I don't know if you ever saw that Super Bowl commercial they did about the
Yes.
car
The
with
car
Smart
one.
Pack.
Smart pack. You can't
Yeah,
park there.
yeah,
It's
I
okay. It's
packed it.
got smart pack.
Yeah.
Anyway, well,
Anyway,
should we, instead of reviewing the Boston accent, which I would love to do because you do a very good Boston
oh,
accent.
it's. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's good.
I was in a car for hours with you and Rob doing Boston accents, and let me tell you, maybe it's just Stockholm syndrome, but I enjoyed it.
I mean, it's definitely
Um,
it's only good if you consider I'm trying to get a laugh, not that I'm trying to accurately reproduce the accent.
okay, what are we talking about this week? What should we start
Oh
with?
yeah, let's just it's
Let's
a
talk
good
about
pivot.
the things.
It's a good pivot to the main meat of the show. Right, so we're going to talk about two things. The first thing we're going to talk about is technically a 2023 film. The last one will probably not. But one of the last ones we're going to do this year on the podcast. It's now available to purchase on demand, and that is the Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney starring Anyone But You. And Simon, as you are our resident British person and thus expert on the Bard
Rom-coms.
Billy, Shakes,
Oh.
why don't you please take us through this loose adaptation of Much Ado About Nothing, which is what this movie is.
Yeah, except it's way less loose than it kind of implies in the marketing. So Sydney Sweeney plays B, who at the beginning of the movie, it just starts with a meet cute, and she goes into a coffee shop really needing a pee, and they won't let her in because she didn't buy anything. So the unbelievably handsome and charming Glenn Powell plays a character called Ben, who then pretends that she's his wife, and so buys something for her so she can have the key. And it's it's hard not to be in on this movie from that point because it is so kind of charming. You know exactly what kind of movie this is going to be in, and if you're anything like me, a real love of the late '90s, early 2000s rom-com, then this is that. As you said yesterday, if this came out in the late '90s, they'd be like straight to superstar level after this movie because it is a enemies to friends, much ado about nothing. Um, Girl and a boy who have a night of miscommunication that goes well but ends badly, and then that sets them up for basically hating each other because they think the other one was nasty to them, and obviously it builds and it builds and it builds. And then through a hilarious set of circumstances, they find themselves in a situation where one of them is their friend getting married to the other one's sister, and they're so sick of everyone trying to get them together, they pretend to be together. So it can then be a ploy to make the people they want to get with actually fall in love with them. It's much ado about nothing. And the movie actually has a number of quotes from Shakespeare as titles of things, which I think is brilliantly done. And also, some people actually use lines from Shakespeare, and it's brilliantly handled as well. And what's not to like? It's an hour and 40 minutes of two beautiful people hating each other, and then having hot times together, and then hating each other again, and then getting back together, and it ends with a singing montage. I mean,
Yeah.
I loved this movie, and every day since I've seen this movie, I love it a little bit more. It really gets in there, and everyone's having a great time. If anything, um, I think Sydney Sweeney, she's got one very kind of goofy physical scene in this film, and I really, really wish the director and writer had leaned into her goofiness a bit more because she pulls a couple of faces in this that are downright hilarious. She's definitely got a goofiness that is underused. And it was interesting to me actually that I didn't know this when I saw it, but it's the same director as Easy A. And I think that a lot of this film would benefit from a bit of that Emma Stone like goofiness that she does so well in Easy A. Sydney Sweeney is absolutely capable of that too, and I think they should have tapped into that a bit more because she is a little bit auto cue sometimes, but it doesn't matter because they're both so charming. It's it's so good at getting laughs. Like they really play for the audience, and it's just a real pleasure. Everyone looks gorgeous. The jokes are funny. There's lots of nudity, well, partial nudity, but also most of it is done for laughs. And Glenn Powell's a superstar. I've never seen. Well, I've seen him in Top Gun Maverick, but he does this. He does that fantastic sort of Harrison Ford Han Solo thing of being unbelievably hunky and charming, but still have like vulnerabilities when he gets hurt or things that he's scared of or doesn't want to do. And it plays like gangbusters. I love this film, and it looks really good. It's shot really well. It's edited really well, which I think is a huge part of making a comedy work. And between this and Bottoms as well, I am just so happy to see like great comedies come back, even if they're not brilliant films. Like this is the other end of the spectrum from a technical masterpiece like Oppenheimer. This is purely a pleasure film, and everyone's on board, and I really enjoyed it.
I mean, I did. I don't. Everything you just said, ditto. um, I mean, it's a great film. It's so much fun. I think you can. It's hard to go wrong adapting Shakespeare, as long as you do it in the right spirits. And Much Ado is a fairly silly comedy play. And this is a fairly similar silly comedy movie starring two beautiful people, surrounded by a cast of also beautiful people.
Mm.
Um, it's definitely some like it has that rom com thing where everybody's clearly rich, which so like that can be a thing for some people, but like as long as you're on board with what's going on, it doesn't really matter. Like, so they get to fly to Australia. Oh, he strips down naked because there's a huntsman spider. Like, there's a lot of ridiculousness in this movie, and it's so like bought into its own world that it doesn't like who would strip naked in that scene where there's a huntsman spider. Like, no one in real life would. but it never feels out of place because the world it's in is so well conceived.
Hmm.
And I do agree with you that Sydney Sweeney, it could have leaned into her being a little more goofy. But I enjoy that she is, generally speaking, the goofy one in the relationship from the get go.
Hmm.
And I think that it's it's hard to talk about without spoiling the ending. But the way that the story resolves really, really, really worked for me with with Glenn Powell like indulging in the ridiculousness of the moment. Um,
Hmm.
uh, in which he effectively jumps off a cliff.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just such an easy film to love. Like there's no like pretension that it is trying to be important or that it is trying to be anything other than a fun 100 minutes at the cinema. And I love it for that. And it's very, very funny. This is the kind of movie where ahead of watching it, I was talking with my wife and she said something along the lines of like, I've seen them both in a lot of things. I've thought they were good in those things, but I don't really know that I'm on board with either of them. And then like 4 minutes into the film, she's like, I hate that I love them so much
Absolutely.
already. And that because they are immediately charming. They are and they have such immediate and like for lack of a better word, they have immediate like very thick chemistry. Like they are so
Mhm.
perfect for one another. And I think that's true if you watch any of their press tour stuff. Like they are both in
Mhm.
relationships, but they have such great
Mhm.
chemistry together that it's hard to
Mhm.
imagine them not sleeping
Yeah.
together.
And the marketing's already leaned into maybe they fucked in real life.
Yeah,
It's very
and they're
clever
both
marketing.
beautiful people. Like they are
Mhm.
the two hottest people on the planet right now, as far as
Mhm.
I can tell. And you just want to see them to get together, and that's what happens because it's a Shakespeare comedy, not a Shakespeare tragedy, and it's wonderful. And then
Yeah.
you're surrounded by like Alexander Shipp is in this, and
Oh
Matthew
my
Robinson
god.
is in this, and like the parent figures are played by Michelle Hurd and Brian Brown
Brian Brown,
and
fantastic.
Dermot Mulrooney and Rachel Griffiths. Like all of these people are so good and know
Mhm.
exactly the right tone to strike for the material that they're in. And then it
Mhm.
works into Shakespeare again. I think you said in brilliant ways where they'll just be walking past a sign and there'll be a line of Shakespeare on that sign. Or my personal favorite running gag is that someone will say a line from Shakespeare and Brian Brown will be like, "Hey, that's pretty good," and the other person will say, "Yeah, I just made it up." Like this happens like 3 or 4 times in the movie. It's
Yeah.
so good and it so clearly knows what it's trying to do, and I have a hard time not believing. I have a hard time believing this didn't send these two to superstardom. Like it's weird to me.
Mm.
It's not that kind of film, but it did like it made a ton of money in the cinemas. Some people will chalk that up to lack of competition around Christmas, but like it made
Mm.
190 million against $25 million budget, so
That's awesome.
people liked it. And then, like you
And
say, it ends with there's a running theme of the Natasha Bedingfield song theme, which suddenly escapes me. And
I
at the
don't
end, it ends with like a montage of all the people singing it that they've clearly put together from all of them singing it in different scenes they've shot throughout production. And I
and that
love that.
well, I got a question for you because we went to the Valentine what's the word re-release of this movie encore, the Valentine encore of this movie, where they introduced the movie looking beautiful, and then they said stay after the credits for an extra treat, and so there's that unwritten montage, and then you get all the credits, and then as a bonus, there's another unwritten montage with extra outtakes from the movie that is glorious. I wonder if you got that too.
I didn't stay through the credits, but so I've said this before on the show, when a film becomes available to rent or to buy, we often make a choice between renting or like a gamble between renting or buying. And this time we didn't have to because it's currently only available to buy, so I bought it. So I can just go back and watch that after and I
Yes,
can report back later.
yes, but it's
I'm sure it's
wonderful.
in like the special features either way.
Yeah, it'll be
Um,
around. It's probably on YouTube as well, but it's just great. It's like they know exactly what they're doing, and the fact that none of them can sing properly kind of makes it funnier. Like
I
it's
mean,
not. It's
none of them are trying as well. It's not like anyone's. I mean, to be fair, we know Alexander Shipp can sing, but they're not trying to
yes,
like
yes. No, she can hold it. That's true.
none of these people are trying to do anything but have a good time singing the
Yeah,
song. Like
it's the
one of
best
the
kind of karaoke.
one of the yeah, it's not a song, it's a karaoke jam. And
Mhm.
like one of the best things in the montage is Glenn Powell and this other guy whose name I can't remember singing in an outdoor
That's
shower buck naked together. So like do
oh.
with that information what you will.
And let me tell you, ladies, straight ladies, if you like the male genitalia, let me tell you, you're in for a nice like single frame of shocking. At one point, my wife leaned over and said, "I don't think I've ever seen a man's penis hole in a film before." It's like blink and you miss it, but it's there, and it's that kind of movie. It's a movie made for an audience, if that makes sense. That in the same way that My Best Friend's Wedding, which is one of my favorite rom-coms, is a movie made for the audience, and with a very similar theme as well. People turn up at someone else's wedding and decide to make it all about them.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Isn't that the one that
it's
has the great say a little prayer singing along scene?
yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
It's also got the great line where the guy, I forget the guy, but Julia Roberts is, they used to be lovers and they're not anymore. And she's like she's partially dressed, getting her underwear on, gets a towel around, and he just says, "Come on, I've seen you a lot more naked than that." And I just think it's just one of the best, and this movie has lines like that as well. I really, really, really liked, just selfishly, that he has flying anxiety and he has his bubble and his rhythm and he has his process to get through it, which she inadvertently learns through probably one of the best scenes in the movie. She finds out that it's this one specific song, so she sings it to him. And
Hmm.
as someone who gets a lot of anxiety from flying, who has a very set rhythm to get through it, I really, really enjoyed the portrayal of that because it just felt very, very real and just very
I also
heartfelt as well.
I also love that he refers to it as his serenity song.
Yes.
And it's not exactly a serene song. It's an upbeat
No,
pop anthem. But
but
yeah.
it's
And I love that whenever it
empowering.
comes on, he just is like, "How do you know my Serenity song?" Like
So
every,
shut the fuck up.
yeah.
Oh, I love this film. Oh my god, I can't wait to watch it again. It was great.
Yeah.
So it's such a pleasure. Come, yeah.
So how many stars for
Do
this
you,
for you?
do you know what? On where
I'm
I
gonna
came out,
I'm gonna
I
I'm,
came.
I'm gonna interrupt you there and just
Wait,
say,
wait,
for the
wait, wait.
record, I'm giving it 4. It's a 4-star movie because it's
So
great fun.
I came
And
out of this movie thinking, oh, I really hope this is the I really hope this is the comeback of solid like 3-star, 6 out of 10 rom-coms. And then I've thought about this movie over and over and over. Like it's almost like the further away I get from it, the more I love it. And so I know the next time I watch it, which is going to be soon, this is going to be a solid 4 star. So I'm just going to cut to the chase and say 4 stars for me.
yeah, fair enough. You know why that is? It's because it's a 4-star movie.
I mean, evidently, clearly it
Yeah.
is. Oh, it's so good.
So it is written. This is the way.
Um,
Yeah.
and so on.
Good. Well, Anyone But You is now available on demand wherever you demand films to be on demand from. So go and do that. I bought it on iTunes. Came with special features. It's worth your money. This is not a paid placement. I'm just saying you should watch this movie. Um,
So, yeah.
so let's move on to our next thing, which is probably going to garner a little more discussion. I'm going to guess. So way back in 2005, a series premiered on Nickelodeon called Avatar: The Last Airbender. And this show ran for 3 series and critical acclaim. It is still to this day sitting at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty incredible considering that's nearly 20 years. It is the story of a boy called Aang. He exists in a world where there are 4 main nations, and each of the people in those nations can uh, effectively they do martial arts that is telekinesis. They can bend a certain one of the classical elements to their whim and fight and construct and do things with it. And Aang is an airbender. He is also a figure in this world called the Avatar, and he is the only person who can bend all 4 of the classical elements, and thus he's tasked with bringing harmony to the world. But At the beginning of the series, he wakes up from having been frozen in a block of ice for 100 years. And in that 100 years, the Fire Nation has attacked the world and made inroads and conquests and basically become the villains of the series to come. And he now has to restore balance to the world. I cannot express to you how much I love this show. This is a kids show that I watched in 2005 when I was 24, and I am now 42, and I still love it just as much. It is an all-time classic, not just animated series, but it is an all-time classic show. It has a spin-off series called The Legend of Korra that details the life of the next Avatar, which is also excellent. It's a wonderfully conceived world. The characters are all incredibly written with incredible depth and given lots of time to grow and mature and turn into the amazing heroes that need to be by the third season finale. So naturally, in 2010, someone tried to adapt it. M. Night Shyamalan tried to adapt it into a movie, which was terrible. And now Netflix has dumped a ton of money into adapting it into a live action television series, and we are going to talk about it. Eh. So, I'm going to start off by saying I think it's probably unfair. It's always difficult, and I think a little unfair to compare a new adaptation of a thing to an original source material. Because I think it sort of can color your reactions, right? You're always questioning whether that was the right adaptational choice or whether that shot for shot remake of a scene was good or better or worse or whatever. So I'm just going to come out and say it that judged on its own merits, the show is not very good and it's so heartbreaking. I mean, there's a lot of comparison to the original to be made, and I'm sure we'll get there. But just standing on its own, it is, it's very rushed. There's only 8 episodes. There's the middle episodes in particular, the second act episodes. So that's basically like episodes 3, 4, and 5, and 6. But in particular, I think it's been about a week since I watched it, but it's probably 4, 5, and 6 in particular have just so much stuff crammed into them, and none of it is given the amount of time it needs to like breathe and allow the characters to react and adjust and grow from their experiences in meaningful ways. The acting is super uneven. Not just in that there are some, and I'm not going to name any names here because most of these people are kids. Some of them are great, some of them are not. But more to the point, some of them are existing in a serious adult drama, and some of them are existing in a live action cartoon, and there's no consistency between the rhyme or reason why. I think a really great example of this is one of the main antagonists of this story is this crown prince of the Fire Nation, Prince Zuko. He's played by an actor called Dallas Liu, and his uncle Iroh, played by Paul Hyung-sun Lee, who is a very famous and very well-regarded Canadian actor. And I actually think they're both pretty good in this show. But they're each other's most frequent scene partners, and it is like they are acting in different shows. Like neither one is bad, but one of them is existing in this revenge or this like search for redemption gritty drama, and the other one is existing in a cartoon, and it doesn't work. And that's true throughout. I wrote a review of this show for Exclaim this week, so you can go read that if you like. But my thesis remains to this point, having thought about it a lot more since that point, is that the show is trying to serve 2 different aims, one of which is to make a faithful adaptation of the original show, and the other one is to sort of age it up in theme and tone for a new, different, and perhaps more adult audience. And in trying to do both of those things at the same time, it has failed to do either effectively. And I just found it really heartbreakingly bad. I will say the back half is better than the first half. Like the last 3 episodes or so are much better than the first 5. And you can definitely tell they saved a bunch of money at the start for the big finale at the end.
Mhm.
But there's only so much that'll get you when you are, you know, just to go back and say that, like, I don't think it's necessarily fair to compare to the original, but when the show is relying on you to remember the original at certain points, to understand why things that are happening are important, I think that's a problem, right? Like, there's moments in the show that don't make sense if you don't have the context of the original. Um,
Mhm.
and there's also a number of times in the show where a new episode will start and someone will talk about an adventure they've just had off camera in the original, but not shown in this one. So it has no weight. And there's a really good example of this, I think, is in the last 2 episodes. There's a really key and important character moment for one of the young actors. And I think that they handle it really actually super well. It's a really well executed um, fight scene. And but it doesn't make any sense because to that point in the show, they haven't really shown that character learning how to do that. She just sort of
Mhm.
knows how to do it at the end.
Yeah.
It's implied, don't be wrong. We are told that it is happening in the background.
Yeah.
We're never shown. We're very rarely shown. There's maybe one scene of them training. But as a result, it kind of feels empty. Like, it feels hollow because, like, she can just do that now.
S
And
Absolutely. So much is unearned because they keep doing that thing. Or they begin a couple of episodes with, "Oh, I can't believe we just had that amazing experience off screen," and all of the things about the original is how much they all grow into the people they become, and each of those little adventures adds something really significant to them. And it's so weird for something that for a series that is so crushed together that it's so they've even taken some elements from season 2 and pushed it into season 1. There's also been lots they've left out, which was quite important to the characters that they become and the way that they learn to do things. And so it just feels unearned. Like it just magic. We have to take it. Oh, okay. They did this, so they're now magically they've leveled up off screen. It's just
mhm.
weird.
And like, so just to go back to actually comparing it to the original, I think I think I was talking about this with you earlier this week, and I don't know that I'm fully articulating what I'm trying to say very well here, but there's a real this adaptation and other adaptations of other things that I've seen, especially in TV series these days, seems to be incredibly focused on plot, which I know sounds a bit weird to say out loud. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, this film goes to extraordinary lengths to make sure that, like, these, like, key moments from the original material happen. But in doing so, it forgets to include the actually important things from the original, which is these characters hanging out and learning.
Mm,
It leaves out the moments of these kids being kids and, like, perhaps not just learning, like, the new skill they need to beat the boss at the end, but learning that they need to grow up a little bit and learning that they need to perhaps take on more responsibility and discuss whether they're even able to take on that responsibility.
mm,
Um, there's like all of the show, which has, again, an amazing plot. The original show has an amazing plot, but the most important thing about the show is the time spent with the characters, and we get basically none of that in this remake, and it's
mhm,
just heartbreaking
mhm,
because the best. I mean, if you do like a YouTube search, you're gonna find for best moments, you're gonna find fight scenes, but the best scenes in the film are usually character moments. And
mm.
the fight scenes that are the best are the ones where they're developed straight out of character moments. And it's I'm just gonna keep saying heartbreaking. I'm so
Yeah, this
frustrated with
is.
this show.
I remember Avatar is one of the things I first knew about you and the kind of things that this has been something you've loved deeply for a long, long time. And I don't have the knowledge of it. I've seen it all and Korra as well and enjoyed it very, very much. My kids love it, but I don't have the deep knowledge of it like you do. So it's tricky
I
to separate it off.
I mean, it is, but at the same time, I don't think it would I think if I had never seen the original, it's possible I might be a little more positive about it. But these problems I'm talking about wouldn't not magically not exist,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like by the time you get that big duel in episode 7 or whatever it is, like
Hmm.
it like that character still wouldn't have earned the skill level she's displaying in that moment,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Um and I think that's pretty just indicative of the whole thing.
Hmm.
Um and it's, for a show that's trying to cram so much into just these 8 episodes, and honestly it's not even, when you think about it, like the original series is like 22 episodes I think, and
Yeah,
they're 22
yeah.
minutes each, and this is 8 episodes at roughly an hour. It's not actually that much different in time. Like they had the time to just maybe be, a little more selective about the adventures they choose to portray. um and I don't actually think, like, there's a number of plot lines that are squashed together in the middle act of this series, and I don't actually
Hmm.
think squashing them together is that bad of, like, I think it's actually a pretty solid adaptational choice. It's just executed so poorly because it separates the characters too much. It and it again, it doesn't remember to show the characters learning and growing, a at all, or b together, in any of
Hmm.
these adventures. um, which has always been one of the great strengths of the original show, is them
Hmm.
learning and growing together.
Hmm.
And I don't know, the bending's cool though. Like the martial arts are like miles better. I mean, not that it would be hard. It's a pretty low bar for this to be the
Yeah.
second best version of Avatar, but like at least in this time when they're doing martial arts, like the bending, like the elements around them that they're bending are connected to the martial arts that they're doing, which is
Hmm.
just a not a thing in the 2010 movie where they would just do martial arts and things would happen around
Yeah, yeah.
them. But I feel like maybe this is a show that should have just stayed animated. Like I don't think it's hard to say because there's lots of shows that do magic and telekinesis and things like that and do them really extremely well. But this show was just never going to have the budget. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe we need to stop letting Netflix do this because this is a show that needed to have a huge budget, and it just clearly does not.
So I partially agree with you. I don't think, obviously the budget's the issue, and having seen the last couple of episodes now, it's very clear that it was backloaded because it needed to be. So a lot of this I didn't work. I'm like you. I'm not going to pick apart the acting. There's some absolutely mind-boggling acting, line delivery in this, and I laid the blame purely at the director of the first 2 episodes, a guy called what's his name, Michael Goy, and the overall showrunner, the overall writers for this as well, for smashing it all together. The first 2 episodes are some of the worst directed TV episodes I think I've ever seen, in terms of creativity, in terms of visual storytelling. I have never seen such a basic set of shots, angles, line delivery, editing outside of like student films. And Netflix is a big player, right? They are a big player now. They have a big budget for big things like this. This is a flagship show, and my comments are going to be the same as when we watched Echo. It's not good enough. It's not good enough to
Hmm.
settle for that standard of these first 2 episodes. Luckily, each of the episodes it goes in pairs, and each pair is directed by a different director. So as we go through Jabbar Raisani and Roseanne Liang and Jet Wilkinson, the visual storytelling doesn't just get better, it's night and day. Like suddenly you have someone creatively telling a story.
It doesn't just get better; it is present at all.
Yeah, there are more than one interesting shot. And honestly, I'm not. This isn't hyperbole. Go and watch the first 2 episodes, especially if you've done any filmmaking, or even if you haven't. It is the most basic bitch of directing that you could possibly imagine, to the point where I was laughing out loud. There's a couple of meaningful moments where the shots change so they can stare out into the universe, into the audience, like it's some kind of K drama. it's awful, awful, awful direction. All the line reads, all these poor kids who we've seen some of these kids in other things where they've been good, and the line reads are like it's like they can't wait to get through their words. And I blame the director fully for this, because there is no line direction in this whatsoever. The shots are awful, the editing is crap, and the CG gets worse throughout the whole thing, but that's another thing. So
Well, I'd say
yeah,
that the CG gets, I would argue, gets better, just because I will say that the last two episodes are actually good.
Yeah.
The not great, to be fair. They still have problems I've already talked about. But if in terms of like these episodes in pairs, the last two are the most successful pair.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't think they're the strongest directed pair, but I think they are the most successful pair.
Yeah.
And yeah,
in terms of the visuals, right? Just there's so many films like Hero and the House of something. Oh, what's
Flying
it called?
Daggers.
House of Flying Daggers, and of course Crouching Tiger. All these great Wuxia movies that play with magical movement. Like what else do you need apart from some CG of the elements and the actual specific choreography? If someone with some fight choreography vision had looked at that and thought, okay, that's a great template for these people that fight with elements. It's already there. Like why? Oh, it just drives me crazy.
This is where I come down to, like, maybe they don't have the budget, because it is very backloaded, and there's a lot of really great action in the last episodes that there just isn't in the middle episodes. Not really. But this is a story that, like, as much as I'm going to say that, like, it is the character moments that are the most important, like, this is a moment, like, they should be bending all the time. They are doing martial arts all the time in this story. They should be, and they're not. They're just walking around like it's just a normal fantasy world. And I feel like they needed to have the budget or the intent to show these martial arts happening, and in particular being learned throughout all 8 episodes. And they just don't do any of that. And I feel like this is sort of that capitalist problem of trying to, like, get the important bits out of the story for as little amount of money as possible.
Yeah.
And I don't know why the original creators of Avatar left the production, but it's hard to imagine that's not at least part of it, right? Because that's the thing. This show has been in production since at least 2018, and in 2020 or so, and they announced it with Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko as being involved, which was amazing. But they walked away in 2020 or maybe 2021. They walked away over creative differences, and it's hard to imagine that wasn't at least part of it. And I don't know why, like, they didn't say explicitly, but it's just like, again, it's what I was trying to say earlier is that, like, there's a real focus on the plot elements, and this is it should be a character driven show. So that by the end of this story, Aang has to make some very important decisions, and his character is what allows him to make those decisions in the way that he makes them. And I'm speaking very vaguely because I don't want to spoil the end of the whole series for anyone who hasn't seen it. But without that character development, it's just not going to work. In the same way that I will say that the last 2 episodes of this season are actually pretty good, but still don't really 100% work the way they should, because we haven't spent the time with the characters that we need to. And then that's even getting, and, like, I don't think most of the adaptational changes, like, for example, again, there's a number of stories that are squashed together in the second act of this series, including some from season 2, and there's one from the end from season 1 that's at least one major one at the end of season 1 that should be, technically speaking, in those last 2 episodes, that's omitted entirely. And I don't think those are bad choices. I just think they're really terribly executed. because they are missing the point of what made the show great.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary of the whole thing. I think it's the original creators leaving because of creative differences, and then seeing what we see. I think they have missed so much of the point of why it existed in the first place, and its overall tone as well is far more graphic and adult than it needs to be. But it like little character development moments are gone too, and it's a shame. It's a real shame because it's the original is an amazing piece of storytelling, and there's a lot of potential there to bring it into live action. And again, maybe it shouldn't have been Netflix who did it, because this is not the first time we've had this discussion about Netflix and their adaptations. So
no, and I doubt it'll be the last. I mean, I'm on the fence of whether I want them to even. I'm pretty confident at this point. The response to the show, I wouldn't say that we are in the minority exactly. But what I will say is that even the people who are saying that they liked it are saying it was fine. Like, they're not saying it was great. They're saying, yeah, this is fine. I'm reasonably confident in guessing that it's going to get a second season, and I just hope they step it up. Like, I hope that they. I don't know whether I want to say that Albert Kim should be fired, or that they should just, or that he refocuses what the show should. But he listens to some of the feedback and refocuses on what's supposed to be important. But this is the kind of show that, like, it needed the Apple or HBO treatment, not the Netflix treatment. And it bothers me that those are even like distinct tiers that I can say and people will understand what I mean.
Yeah, totally. No, you're totally right.
But
needed care.
It needed
care and understanding.
Yeah, it needed more care, more understanding, more empathy, more everything. And yeah, and that's even before we talk about, like, we haven't even touched on the fact that, like, they've clearly spent a ton of money, but also they've trying to strike this tone of being a little more grounded, a little more serious, a little more adult. But everyone looks like they're in, like, admittedly top tier, but still, Fan Expo cosplay. It's all of the costumes are a little bit too perfect. Like, it doesn't look like a lived-in world because they look so pristine and so precise. Nobody looks like they've ever torn a shirt or spilled anything on her shirt. You know what I mean? Like, although I will say that, like, I don't want to focus on any of the kids, but I will say that Daniel Day Kim seems to be having the time of his life as Fire Lord Ozai, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah. I feel the same way about the visuals. That I don't know what's happened with CG visuals. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago for something, didn't we? Like there's no depth to it. Maybe there's no, like, distance to it or depth. It doesn't feel real, and it's not even cartoony. It's not even stylized. It just feels, yet again, just like lowest common denominator CG backgrounds with CG effects that don't have any weight in the world, and has not been given any kind of attention to detail either.
Well, actually, so it's interesting because I will say that, like, when there is bending on screen, I would say that part of it is actually generally very well handled. But where the visuals fall down for me are in things like costume design and set design and background design. And it just doesn't really work. It's very upsetting. I think there's a scene that's pretty emblematic of the whole thing, where there's a fight in an Earth Nation city, and Zuko, who's a firebender, sets a cart of cabbages on fire, and the guy who owns the cart of cabbages does a really dramatic, like, build up to yelling to the sky about his cabbages being on fire, and it's treated as this really, like, dramatic and important moment, and it's a callback to the original. There's a cabbage vendor in the original, and his cabbages are always getting destroyed. But this treats that moment in this show as though it's the, like, most important thing that could possibly have happened in that moment. And even that is not earned, and that is just super upsetting. And the cabbages look fucking fake, so who cares? Like For as much as the bending looks pretty good, most of the rest of it looks pretty cheap. And again, I would say that it is backloaded, so the CG in the big finale is actually pretty great. But that still doesn't get past the fact that the world doesn't look like a real one that people exist in.
It really
and
doesn't.
you can get away with that. You can get away with that in animation, but you can't really get away with that when there's real people on set.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway,
are we starring this? How many stars are you giving the Netflix Avatar: The Last Airbender?
2.
Yeah, it's 2 from me as well.
I wrote a review of it for Exclaim. I ended up giving it 5 out of 10 there, and I think that's a pretty good translation to 2 out of 5 here. So, and honestly, it's been over a week since I saw it, and over almost a week since I wrote that. And the more I think about it, and the more I talk to other people who've seen it now, because this is now streaming. It came out on the 22nd. Today that we're recording is the 25th, and so lots of people have seen it. And the more I think about it, the more just disappointed I am in it. You know, I'm not angry about it, as I might have been, say, 5 or 10 years ago, but it's just so frustrating to see something that not just that I like, but that has so much potential just sort of squandered to be produced as inexpensively as possible, despite having been in production for so long. You know, like, it seems like there's a disconnect there between the pre-production and production phases and what we get on screen. It feels like it was made in a month, which is obviously hyperbole, but it feels like it was made in a very short amount of time. And I don't quite understand how that's possible, given how not great it is.
Yeah, that's a good summary. I agree. What a shame.
Yeah.
I just hope they don't. I adore Legend of Korra. I adore how it's shifted to this like industrialist background with all the magical stuff going on, and I really hope they don't get their hands on it or even try to make. If this is the standard that they're doing, I don't want them to make any more.
On the upside, we are apparently getting from Avatar Studios. There's a studio formed around this franchise to make more stuff, and we are apparently in fall of next year, so fall 2025. We are getting a feature-length animated movie about Aang and his friends, set while they're adults, which I think has a lot of potential as an idea. So we are getting new, good Avatar stuff coming, and there's a lot of great comic books as well, which I need to read more of, to be totally fair. But this is not it. This is not it. Anyway, that's a huge bummer.
Yeah. But anyway, watch Anyone But You. Go do that.
Yeah, go watch Anyone But You, and go watch, as of this recording, you have like six days left to see Tenet in an IMAX theater if you're in the region that's showing it. And that's, as a person who doesn't like that movie especially much, I did that yesterday, and it's totally worthwhile. You can hear more about it if you listen to our bonus show, which you can get access to by subscribing to our Patreon. How's that for ad copy?
Fantastic.
No, we're gonna wrap up the show there. So it's as good a point as any to point out that if you've liked the show, if you've liked us talking, you can get more of it by subscribing to our Patreon. It is as little as $2 Canadian a month, and you get a whole bonus show. This week's was about Tenet and Christopher Nolan and vibe movies, and I thought it was an interesting conversation and a little more freeform. We also have a Ko-fi. Those are both going to be linked in the show notes. If you'd like to follow us, if you'd like to help us a little more indirectly, you can always, smash that like button, crash down on that subscribe button, tell your friends, help us get in front of more earballs, so we can keep bringing you the show that we enjoy doing so much.
Yes.
If you'd like to follow us, there's a couple different ways you can do that. The show is on social medias at AwesomeFridayCA, and I am on social medias at MatthewAF, and Simon is not on social media, so you can also follow us at our homepages. It's awesomefriday.ca for the show. It is temporarypen.com for Simon, and it is stretched.ca for me. And you can find all of our recent writings and content. If you want to read my review of Avatar: The Last Airbender, I'll link it in the show notes, but it's also on the website. Along with everything else I've written in our podcast lately. which has actually been a lot. So I'd appreciate it if you went and check that out. Last but not least, we are here in Vancouver, Canada, on the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you join us again on another Awesome Friday.
Thanks, bye.